We're now on chapter 27, which is our last chapter in our plants or our botany unit, and we're going to end up talking about our flowering plants and how they reproduce. And we want to go back and look at their reproductive strategies. Sexual reproduction is advantageous because it generates variation. And if you'll remember from one of the previous chapters, plants have a two-stage alternating life cycle, from the sporophyte to the gametophyte to the sporophyte to the gametophyte. It's a cycle that occurs, and it's between the diploid and the haploid. And the sporophyte is the diploid stage, and it is dominant, and it produces the haploid spores by meiosis. And meiosis is the part of the life cycle that bears the flowers. And the spores will divide mitotically to become haploid gametophytes. And then the gametophytes make the gametes. And the gametes fuse to make the diploid zygote, and then the zygote divides mitotically and becomes the diploid sporophyte. So it's a cycle that just repeats itself over and over. And you can see here, looking at the diagram, you've got the sporophyte in the blue, where you've got the flowers, and you've got the anther and the filament, and then the female part of the plant with the ovary, the ovules, and the stigma and the style. And so those diploid part of the plant will actually produce the haploid spores, which you can see down at the bottom in the haploid stage. The microspore is the male gametophyte and produces the pollen grain, which produces the sperm. And then the megaspore is the female gametophyte that produces the egg, and they fuse together, and you've got this diploid zygote, and that will then in turn divide mitotically and eventually become the diploid sporophyte. So it's just repeating itself over and over and over. Now, a flower produces two types of spores. I just mentioned them in the diagram. The microspore is the male gametophyte, and it will go through mitosis and become the pollen grain. And the megaspore is the female gametophyte, and it will undergo mitosis and become the female gametophyte, and an embryo sac within the ovule that's within the ovary. And the ovule will become the seed, and the ovary becomes the fruit. And the seed contains the embryo and the stored food that's surrounded by a seed coat. Now, looking at flowers. Flowering occurs because of environmental signals, such as the length of the days or the temperature. In monocots, those flower parts are going to be in threes or multiples of threes, and in eudicots, they're going to be in fours or multiples of fours, or in fives or multiples of fives.